I'm just going to start recording us because we're going to kind of start moving into it. I, in preparation for this morning, I found myself going down rabbit holes, and I thought, well, what is the history of humans? And then I thought, what is the history of artists? And what's interesting, this is kind of a short little tale. What's interesting to me is that so far, I can't find it. When I do a search on artists, what I get is art history or famous artists or the history of art, right? So, but the idea of an artist, because I want to understand, what's the deal? Why is a course like this so necessary? What happened to make it novel to talk about? So I'm going to keep researching that, but it's definitely a question mark for me.
And what's the word art come from?
Okay, the history of art. Well, let me look. Art etymology. It's a good question. Hang on. So I've asked for art etymology, but I'm not seeing etymology. I'm just seeing. So the word originates in Latin, as usual. But let's see what else I can find. Early 13th century. So in the early 13th century, skill as a result of learning or practice. To prepare, to fit together. Etymologically akin to Latin armor, which is weapons. So that's but yeah, in Middle English, usually a sense of skill in scholarship and learning, especially in the 7 sciences or liberal arts. Yeah, I see none of these really speak to my.
No.
I think, Claire, I heard something that might be in the realm of what you're thinking of, because I heard an anthropologist, and he's also a naturalist. I don't know, I think he's also in California, John Young, talk about those villages, tribes, groups of people who are native to a land. And he said, okay, in the beginning, it was like everyone was an artist, everyone was a medicine man, everyone knew how to do the rituals. So it wasn't differentiated, and it was something like the birthright of everyone to be to live all those things, because it's part of the human nature. And I thought maybe because you speak in dynamic emergence about also your indigenous self, and I related those both things in a way. Yeah,
it's very cool for me that I can speak with you both and Tina with that reference point of dynamic emergence, because this is really kind of the reward is one word. I'm sure there's better words for us as humans becoming more aware of ourselves metaphysically, is that it opens up doorways to reclaiming that kind of creative impulse because everything is so interactive. And I think the more we know that, the more, in a way, justification there is for being creative as just part of who we are and not some special add-on, you know, like advanced features kind of thing. I'm curious if either of you have had any new thoughts or persisting thoughts since last week because of last week.
You mean why I'm here question?
Well, one of the questions we asked was about how we grew up and how did that influence our relationship to the Numinous? And that idea of domestication of our wild nature over time. So anything, some unusual emotions or considerations, even now.
For me, last time I couldn't concentrate myself because of I had a friend. But more and more I feel I become more clear about my way of living. And I'm more it become clearer and clearer since I got that Chinese medicine, herb medicine, the mixture of the lots of herbs and lots of things, and which I boil it by myself with the fire stove. And while I was doing that, you know, I really felt joy in me, really. And I really feel that, this kind of process, I'm involved with somehow healing of my body and consciousness, and at the same time, everything. And now that excited me so much. And I really become more and more clear that, you know, when Sweden has had a cold December, and it was so cold, so many people used so much electricity, and now people are really complaining because the electricity bill is really high, because even for the company who are kind of providing electricity also had a hard, you know, making so they are aware that the price is so high. It's like a double price than last year. So many people are really worried, and myself got really shocked when I saw the bill. But at the same time, I felt that, okay, this is the reality, and now it's Sweden. I'm living in Sweden. I'm in the winter, and I'm burning the wood, and this process of involving with this natural circles and natural way as living, as much as I can, kind of give me a joy. And also I was talking yesterday about you know, my menstruation water, when now I don't have, but while I had that, I kept the water with my blood and offered the blood to the nature or garden every time. And that kind of thing is for some people, why you are doing that kind of thing, you know, it's too complicated or something. But doing that kind of thing gave me a joy. And I really understood more and more this kind of inconvenient lifestyle gave me a joy. And it doesn't matter what other people think. But for me, it's like I'm kind of really like, you know, everything is bubbling in myself. It became clearer now. And I don't know why I have that. And my upbringing, I grown up with my grandparents. Maybe that's why I got that way, that I should take care of everything I have. So it's not like, okay, now the new thing come, I want to buy that. You know, throw away the old things and buy new things. New thing is better. New thing is much more environmental friendly or whatever. But I have this old way of thinking that, okay, it's old. Maybe it's I use more electricity, but I should reduce the consumption. But I want to keep the old way because I feel more at home. I feel more me. So maybe that's from my upbringing. The people went through the war. They didn't have anything. So for them, everything was precious. And to take care of the things is very important for them. Maybe that's why I have that in me.
I'm thinking about the second tenet, energy weights to be noticed. That something about the inconvenience forces us to notice things, doesn't it, in a more specific I-thou way, relational.
Yeah.
Because we can't just go on automatic.
And also, you know, the situation I have, I know if I want to work more, and if I want to work only for income, maybe I can do something else. But I know really strongly that that's not the way I want to live here on earth. I want to feel more kind of I want to feel that I'm doing something and I'm spending time 100% to the things I want to do. I'm very interested or I'm curious for. I don't want to waste any time for something I'm not interested in. So for me, the money part is okay, it's tough, but you know, something like that. And I know always something happen and I can survive. That I know until now, I have understood. So when, you know, when you offered this course and I thought, I don't know if I can afford this, but I thought, but why not? Clare taught me a lot and I'm still very curious about what I can learn with this course and what I can discover about myself. That's more interesting than, you know, that's what I thought. Yeah. And cutting my hair today, my friend who is a hairdresser, she has been cutting hair for almost 50 years, but 30 years conventional chemical hairdresser, but all this 20 years now, she doesn't use any chemical, any shampoo, anything. And she has this energy cut, and she's a healer at the same time. So when she cut my hair, she really feel it from my body and everything. And she said, I don't know, I don't want to stop cutting because it's so good. It's good to cut. But she cut really, really tiny bits. So it's so exciting to meet that kind of person, people who really into the area, and they know and they feel the energy. She feels the energy. That's why it's so exciting. And of course it takes time, and of course because of the time it's more cost, but that's fantastic for me. Spending the money for that kind of people's special area, the person who can feel the energy, that's the only thing I want to spend money on. So I'm getting clearer and clearer. I have been living like this, but I feel in myself that it become more purely like a cleaner, that I can see it. So this is the way. I never had a doubt, but more clearer.
That's so beautiful. Oh, golly, that was a rich experience.
I want you both to come to Sweden and go to her, and she is fantastic when she cut her hair.
I will. I will.
She cut hair, but otherwise she's so talkative. She can't stop talking. But while she's doing the cutting, she's just quiet because she is in some kind of trance. She's communicating with the hair and everything. So it's so like a ceremony,
I love that, because I actually love going to the hairdressers anyway. The way they touch your hair, especially if you get it washed, that massaging, and it's just so special.
Yeah.
I get very, very relaxed.
Yes, please come to Sweden.
I'm going to.
Yes,
I'm
good.
going to.
Yes.
Yeah.
I have a lot to share with you, but I'd really like to hear from you first, Eva, if there's anything that's in your heart, or just however random it might seem.
Yeah, I was quite surprised. Well, in short, I'm noticing, I remember lots of my dreams ultimately, and I've begun to art journal a bit. And I think both things give me access to a level of perceiving reality. That is quite special for me. And after our last session, it was like those things merged together, and it was just like I was writing, and it was really just like flowing out of me, and I felt so connected. And then the next day I read something in the newspaper, and I looked at, this reality, this social construction, and I was like, wow, I'm completely alienated from that. I'm completely out. And it's getting, it would get so difficult to communicate with those people. Yeah, and there was really, and I think I really felt this, I felt like thrown back maybe 25 years or more, you know, when I was studying, and, you know, this being creative was such a thing. You have to be someone, and you have to know the right people and to do the right thing. And so, you know, that I always thought, okay, I'm doing something else. Yeah, and I really felt that contrast again, I think, in that moment. I think it was like after our conversation, something really from inside came out, and it clashed against the outside reality. Yeah, I think that's basically the most important thing that happened after our conversation last week.
That is just fabulous. How did you feel about that experience, though, emotionally? Were you glad? Was it a bit turbulent, confusing?
It was definitely turbulent, because I was, you know, I think I'm so multi-layered, and so, you know, there's so many things used to be going on that I have always someone, you know, who is observing. But I was really suffering, because I really felt like, you know, I'm the kid in the school nobody wants to play with.
Welcome to my childhood.
Yeah.
Actually, welcome to my adulthood, my younger adulthood. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think childhood, I was still in my imagination, because as a child, that's kind of allowed, right? Up until a certain age.
Yeah. And so for me, it was really like to experience those facets of me, you know, because I think I've really this, you know, the wild soul combination really attracted me, because I feel like that's my way deeply. I'm deeply connected to that. And there's still, you know, this historical part of me, you know, called Eva Hakes, with her, you know, vita, and what she's done and what she has achieved and whatnot. And for her, it's difficult, because to be this, what you really are, is, and I think especially in the times we are living in, quite conflicted. Yeah.
I looked up, because I looked up the word art. Akiko, you mentioned, well, what about the etymology of art? And because I noticed a reference to developing a skill, like, so the art of cooking, the art, that kind of thing. It made me think that being an artist, I know I have my definition that I enjoy, that one about dancing with reality. I mean, I just love that. But if we think about the word art, then, you know, by the way I've looked it up today, then being an artist means living our life, I would say, with a full skill set, like of our innate skills, including witchery, and a knowledge of plants and herbs, right? It would mean, if you live your life as an artist looking at the word art, it means that being an artist is a journey, because it means you're developing skills, life skills, that have an orientation of, I would say, elegant relationship to the numinous, to the liminal. And I was going to have us do a quick exercise, but I think I'm going to do it afterwards, after I show you some slides, maybe. Do you have a preference? Do you have an intuition, a feeling sense? either of you?
To
Whether to do a very short writing exercise now or after the slides. I think we should do it now.
after.
Let's do it now.
After.
Oh, you're saying after. Eva, what's your vote?
I don't know.
Do I have to vote? Because I feel really neutral to that, because I
feel
would love to
neutral.
see the slides, and I enjoy writing.
Okay,
So
then we're going to do the slides and then we'll do the short writing exercise.
Okay.
Hang on. Let me get to the first one.
But can I say about the artist? I feel that living and dancing with the reality, or but at the same time, some kind of expression must be to be an artist. To
okay,
kind of create something.
So an artist would be someone that generates something.
Yeah, generate, yes.
Okay.
Generate.
But
yes.
Excuse me, but I have to say that because I think we are all the time generating. And I think, for example, when you live your life the way you say it's your way, you know, then you're generating a life, and your life becomes the artwork, I think. So yeah, for me, it's not necessarily that you have to paint or to sing or to write or to whatever.
No, yeah, I agree. But for me, for me, I'm not really good at I haven't really made music or painting or anything, visible. But putting my house or that kind of thing, my original way, that's my way of expressing, I think. So it's not making art, I mean, but some kind of expression, I thought. But of course, everybody do it. So if you say everybody is artist, yes, I agree.
No, I say it's not everybody, but I think when you are getting conscious somehow about what you are doing, for me, it's like I felt for a long time, okay, I'm not creative, I can't do things because I don't know to behave in the right way and to be with the right people, but I definitely have the eye of an artist because I perceive reality in a special way.
Yeah, I think that another perception is simply discovering your own rules. So it could be an artist as opposed to a conformist. There's that. Slides.
Okay, yes.
So we're going to start with something familiar to both of you, which is these little blobs: rational, emotional, sensory, and intuition. And there they are. They collaborate. So we're considering the idea of being an artist as being a way of being. So we've got, as we know, these various ways available to us by design. And not knowing, I think, is one of the most important ones for our growth as a species. But all these ways of knowing and being collaborate. And they have their own language. So if you're using your rational knowing, you are thinking, your emotional knowing, you're feeling, and your sensory knowing, you're sensing. And we experience these, and then we get to interpret them. And that's kind of the fun part, because it's that's everything about our personality and our orientation. So how we interpret things shows us what sorts of things we believe about the world about ourselves in the world. Very much, really, most of what we see outside is an autobiography. And these things feed our imagination and our approach to what we're doing. And when they dance together, these different ways of knowing and being, they create, which kind of goes with that definition that I have as a working definition, that we dance with reality, that is creativity. And when you watch what is happening, so this is the observer and experiencer, when you notice what is happening and feel it and generate it, that's how we get to find out more about who we really are in this moment. In this moment. And especially when no one's looking or assessing us and no one is wondering, how will this be useful? A question I was asked the other day after presenting some of my artwork. I said, I'm not sure that's the right question in this context. So our knowing bias has something to do with how we relate to our creativity. And, meaning, are we more rational, more emotional, more sensory? That would influence the kinds of ways we approach creating something. And it therefore would probably have a relationship to the kind of knowing bias in the audience. So if we share something we've done, and we've done it from a sensory place, but we share it with someone who's very rational, they may not be able to relate to it. And if they're what we might call an immature rational rather than a holistic rational, then they might reject it because they don't have the facility to engage, that's all. And then, so for artists, for people who are actually creating art, that can be tricky if you have thin skin, or if you don't understand that these are just knowing biases. It's just ways of orienting, and then we could take it personally. And that's the chance for us to look at ourselves and see where we might need some care. Like, I have a question mark around my value or the validity of things I create. It's not enough that I just feel like creating. And so if we have a reaction to how someone else, like if we have a reaction that really upturns us, upsets us, that's where it can be quite useful. We'll see something about them, but we can also see something about ourselves. And then, because of what we're talking about today, which is Temenos, Liminal, and Numinous, let's just remind ourselves that we've got like all these territories and domains of existing within existing and relating to. So we've got our collective consciousness, we've got the planets, sentience, intelligence, consciousness, and then there's the cosmos itself in purple. And we have intuition, and we have knowing and not knowing. And then this wonderful invitation in the middle, which is us. So one of these is actually a portrait of a human, the whole of it. And this little part in the middle, to my mind, is the part where we have an awareness of all of that. And we're like, it's the operating room where everything's kind of getting, decisions are being made. And the more we become aware of that, then I think the more freedom we have to create in ways that are more inspiring to us. And again, these domains feed our imagination and our approach. Oops. So art, however we might choose to define it, and I love the fact that it's kind of like trying to put your finger on a blob of mercury. It just squishes away from you. But art does speak in multiple languages. It speaks to us through our imaginations. Our imagination is kind of one end of the tunnel, and innovation and realization and discovery and engagement is kind of takes us to this other end. This is why I think of art as teleology, that there is something extraordinary that knows everything already, knows us already, that draws us towards it. We have this draw. This is what Rumi talks about. Yeah, Akiko.
Is it like enlightenment?
I would say that would be. That's an interesting question. I think the journey of tunneling. My dad was an engineer, so he taught me about tunnels. He was a civic engineer, so he was responsible for building tunnels for the London Underground, some of them. And he taught me that a tunnel starts at both ends. You don't actually just go this way. You go this way. So the mathematics has to be really good. And of course, Earth moves. So there are pieces to that journey that we can't control. But yeah, enlightenment's an interesting one, because enlighten, so to become aware of, in that sense, if enlightenment is something we experience along the way, I would say yeah. But sometimes I know people use the word enlightenment as if it's a state of being that's continuous and kind of the end point of a journey.
Right.
You know, and I think
Yeah,
that's
not me, but right.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
It's just hard to know when someone asks about enlightenment. It depends how you define it, probably.
Yeah, right. Yes.
But if we
Okay.
shine light on something, we see it better, don't we? So
Yeah.
in its very literal sense, I think to be able to be enlightened, you know, I can be enlightened by you. You say something and it's like I get the light bulb. It's all this words about light. The light bulb goes off. Thank you too. So the beauty of arting, generating novelty, generating what's accurate for us, however subtle its message might appear to others, is an expression and an invitation. It's an excitement of our imaginations, our daydreaming, and following impulses and instincts. So where do the languages come from? So here we go. Drum roll. I love this bit. So sacred space awaits in the silence between our words and our actions. So it's in the listening, but sensory listening, emotional listening, rational listening, intuitive listening. So I'm going to show you some words, but we're going to look at three of them today. Temenos, Numinous, and Liminal. These three. You're going to see a couple more, but we're not going to talk about them till next week. Fernweh and Sehnsucht. But these are the three we're going to talk about a little today. So Temenos, by definition, is a physical piece of land. And it's something that a king, probably not only a king, but a king would go over his geography, his territory on his horse, and he'd say, that's my territory, that's my Temenos. And it's considered to be a sacred place, a place with divine power. And it's actual. But of course, we can also use it metaphorically, and we can use it in the interior sense, like that this is a Temenos, just like a goddess or a priestess would call the body the temple. That's the language in that paradigm. This concept of Temenos is another way of referring to ourselves. There we go. I couldn't see Eva. Okay. Oh, so the divine power, Numinous, it doesn't have to be attached to a physical place, but it can show up. So like when we go for walks and stuff, you know, it's like the Numinous for me is more of a spatial cave, like like an atmospheric cave. So Temenos is physical, but Numinous is this place. It could also, I think, and other people might have different thoughts about this. It's that internal space that we can go to when we want to pray, meditate, contemplate, feel, feel our connection. So the Numinous is kind of an environment that you can't point at outdoors because it's sort of an interior environment. It's a state of being. And the liminal, to my mind, is the boundary line. These are three different definitions. I kind of like the last one too, existential angst. Because if we're being creative, there is sometimes there's a feeling of excitement, but if we know, there can also be a feeling of agitation and anxiety, depending. Like I can experience a feeling of excitement, and I can also feel anxious, depending on what it is, and we'll talk about that a little bit more. But the liminal is kind of this paper thin divide between land and sea, between interior and exterior. It's a threshold. And I think there are rituals and payments to be made through ritual to cross over through the liminal into the numinous. And when we're in there, we can gather things and bring them back across the threshold. So that's where we make manifest. So, okay. So a question I ask is, how did we get so far away from seeing life, land, and place as sacred in this way? And this slide will look complicated, and bearing in mind you don't have to remember it. Just whatever sticks with you is fine. No tests. So here's Temenos, Numen. Again, Fenve and Sehnsucht we will come to. So liminal. Liminal is that boundary, that edge. Kind of the place we hang out in when we start waking up. So part of us is in the dream. Yeah, Eva.
I didn't want to interrupt, but you know, this liminal, because I've been writing about that today. And I think it's a Latin word that comes from a wall called Limen that is going through Germany, that was built by the Romans, and that was like the boundary to the Roman Empire, and what was beyond that was the wild and the place where the dragons reside. So
I love it. I love it. Will you post that in our group?
yeah.
That's really cool. Thank you. I wonder if it existed before that, or whether, whether they highlighted it by using it, or whether they created it.
No, they created, I think, as far as I remember, it's because I live in this region where the boundary or the limit of the Roman Empire was, they didn't get much further in Germany. And so they built this wall. And and that was civilization. And what was beyond, was the wild.
Oh, that's so exciting. Thank you.
I'm
It's
sorry.
not my,
So,
it's someone. I have this project with a colleague to write this book, and he told me that I wrote that for him. He told it to me, I wrote it down, and I read that again today. So it's really a coincidence. Well,
Yeah,
energy.
but it is a coincidence because it coincides. So
Yeah.
it's a coincidence, a coincidence.
so you said that the other side of the world there are having dragons live.
That's. I think it was a way of saying it's
Yeah. Okay.
like an
Yeah.
expression of what is outside of civilization. There are all those things you can't.
Okay. Ooh.
Well, and the other
Can't-
thing to add, because this is very juicy. Hi, Tina. The other thing to add
Hi.
is that dragons symbolize creativity.
Yeah.
So, which is why when King Arthur killed the dragon, he was killing our creativity. It's symbolic.
Okay.
Oh,
Oh, I
Now,
didn't
dragons
know.
do other things. They hoard treasure, but given how media in any era can bias us against something, maybe he wasn't hoarding treasure by sleeping on it, but maybe he was protecting the creativity until we were ready to come back and reclaim it. Oh, yes. Just to let you know, Tina, we're talking today about Temenos. Well, lots of things, of course, but the ground focus is Temenos, Numinous, and Liminal. So here we go. So I think I've mentioned this to you before, and you will have seen it somewhere more than once, probably in the dynamic emergence videos. But one of my most exciting words that I think we have is imagination, because you can break it down into 3 words: magic, nation. So a nation is a domain or a territory that can be a physical place like Temenos, but it can also be people, like you have a nation of people. And of course, I have a nation of cells. I have a nation of thoughts. And magi is etymologically either a sorcerer, an alchemist, or a magician. No, a sorcerer, an alchemist, or an astronomer. And so I choose the alchemist part of that option, those available options, because when we use our imaginations, we are alchemizing reality, whether it's a physical thing or a personal thing. And that's pretty fucking amazing, that we are by design capable of changing things with our minds, with our hands, and our hearts. So to alchemize the actual nation of self is to recognize or recognize, become sensitive to, become aware of the sacredness of ourselves and the sacredness of other. And this is all in response to the question, how did we get so far away from seeing life, land, and place as sacred? That question just makes my heart ache. Oh, there we go. To cognize is to know. And as I said, that's inside, outside, and in relation to, between us and perceived other. So these Temenos, Numinous, and Liminal are the ones for today. Sacred cave, an area of land put aside. Divine power in a place, Numinous. And the space of arising or emerging, the space of transition, both sides of a boundary. When people do rituals to talk to beings sort of on the other side, you quite often will actually step over a piece of wood or something to denote that you are now in their territory, in magical territory. So it's amazing to me that these things are real, that they're recognized on the other side as, like in native, in first persons or first people's culture here in the US, Native American, you know, when they walk into a shared circle of activity of humans, you spin, I forget if it's clockwise or counterclockwise. I think it might be clockwise, but that's worth checking, in order to enter the space in the right way, in a good and right way, to be in right relationship to the energy. And then you spin one turn when you leave the circle. So that recognition, I'm in, I'm not in, you know, recognizing that there are elements and beingnesses to address respectfully that are in the space of activity, or even in a field. So it was always worth asking permission. May I come in? And listen for the answer. Make the question real. So I'm proposing today that we are, each of us, both a place and a journey. And we travel. We may not travel geographically, but we certainly travel in other ways. We travel with our imagination and with our willingness to fly. And I think flying also means taking risks, holding a little less tightly the things that we think we know, to allow ourselves to be informed in new ways, even just for a moment. So the question I have for you is, will you travel and notice things? And then what beckons you? What beckons you?
What is beckon?
Calls you forward.
Okay.
Calls to you.
Okay.
Like, if it might also be like the smell of your favorite food. It beckons you. It's like, come here. And we're like, I know you. So there is an artist assignment for this week, and I'm going to show it to you now. What we're doing this week, each of us in our own way, with our own parameters of available options, is meandering. Meander. And I looked up the etymology of meander. It's a lovely word. And it is to wander like a river. And looking at an aerial view, a river might do this, you know, kind of whoosh. So it curves and it undulates and it moves, but it's not in a rush, and it's not really about getting somewhere on time or even at any time. But it's that meandering is beautifully about gentle presence. So my proposal, and of course, it's up to you how long you do this for, but the proposal as a suggestion is that you take an hour and you go somewhere that softens you, maybe, whatever that might be for you, somewhere that feels quiet for you inside. And as you go, let your feet take you for a walk. Let your feet take you for a walk. And you can gather things just here and there. You don't have to have a whole armful. It might just be a few things that you can put in your hand. And let that be kind of a spontaneous impulse to pick a few things up while you're on this meandering walk, because you are walking with the land. You're not walking on the land. You are walking with the land. You are in conversation with the land. And you can pick up anything that it offers you. And the next part is really down to your intuition. You could choose to make an arrangement of these elements on the floor of the forest or wherever you're walking by a lake or whatever it might be, and just take a picture, put them somewhere that feels special, create a Temenos on site and take a picture of it, because we're going to share them next week. And then the other option is to take these elements home with you. And to do that at home, create a Temenos at home and take a picture of it. I'd also like you, and I haven't written this part down, to write some things that come to you when you sit with it, or even as you do it. So I'm going to stop sharing for a minute because I want to just see you more fully. There is something about writing down your impressions. And impressions are not statements of fact. They don't make something real. An impression is when something presses on you, right? And it leaves a mark. And it's not violent. And it's gentle, and it's kind of like the whisper. Rumi talks about the whisper, right? Or this sort of thing that draws you forward. So this is the other world talking back to us, saying, I see you and we need you. We want you. These impressions can be random words. They can be phrases. It could be half a sentence, a series of half sentences. They don't have to make sense. They just have to feel real and alive for you. That's it. Any questions?
I'm all the time something is going around the question. I think it's this indigenous part, this sensory knowing that is so basic for this understanding of art and being an artist, isn't it? And I think it's for me, for the moment, I'm quite in a process with it, because I feel like when I'm thinking with my head, it's not helpful, and not that there are lots of things that escape my view. And when I think it's really an embodied understanding is, it's so much deeper, and it's like it feels like connected to something bigger, because I think when I'm getting into this way of knowing. I'm not isolated anymore. I'm not in my head. I'm just like feeling everything around me. And I think maybe that's for me one of the reasons why artists are so important for the moment, and why this dance with the reality, this it's also dancing is something embodied. You don't say writing with reality or calculating with reality. It's dancing, it's
That's true. Yeah.
this physical thing. And I think you are so right that this is exactly the kind of understanding that we need for the moment, because I think so many of our problems come from this not being rooted and not feeling the connection. And I think this getting into art is really a way, and a really beautiful and fun way to get back to this embodied way of knowing and understanding.
You know what comes to mind hearing you say that is that when we are embodied, I think before we are embodied, we have a feeling maybe that being embodied creates vulnerability. It makes us vulnerable to attack. But in fact, when we are embodied, we feel so much more solid. And therefore, we would actually, if such an attack were to happen, we'd be more available to defend, protect our territory. So I just had that was kind of a new thought when you were speaking for me.
Yeah.
You don't have to agree with it. We don't have to.
No,
you know what I mean?
I'm just connecting
Yeah.
thoughts, I think. Yeah.
Mm. I'm going to invite us to do this exercise. And Tina, I'm torn because I'd love to hear your voice. Do you want to just say hello?
Hello. I wrote on I've been trying to connect. We have high winds here and I had no internet. And so, but my phone worked. So I wrote on the Mighty Networks thing, I'm sorry. And then I saw your email it was about 10 something this morning when I was at yoga, and then I came home and my husband said, I hope you don't have any Zooms this afternoon. I saw I only have 2 hours and hours. And he goes, well, the Wi-Fi's messed up. So anyway, this is a break. It's working for now. So
good. Wonderful. Wonderful. Thank you. Glad you could make it. Sorry you had trouble. So and I'll do it with you, of course. The exercise it's a short writing exercise. I'm gonna time us. We're gonna have 3 minutes. And it starts with this phrase. I'm putting it in the chat, but I'll say it out loud. So the phrase, and this is called stream of consciousness writing. Akiko's turned into a very furry being. Kiko, is your cat eating you, swallowing you whole? Because it looks like a very large animal.
Claire, you
Yes.
wrote in the Mighty Network, it's until 15.
Oh, whoops.
Yeah, so
11:30.
I want to go to the singing one with Suzanne now.
Okay.
So
Okay.
I will skip the writing part, but I will do the homework.
Okay, and there's a very short video I was going to show as well. But what time does hers start?
She started on the hour.
11.
I mean, yeah.
So normally this is I thought it was an hour and a half. What do you expect, Tina and Eva? What did you think? It's an hour and a half or an hour and a quarter?
No, you wrote on the Mighty Network. I mean, on this course.
I thought it was an
was
hour and a
until-
half.
Yeah, I think it's an hour and a half. I
Yeah,
think
but it yeah, it
I
said
will
on
edit
the
that. So
15th. So
it should say an hour and a half. So I will
okay.
So, and Suzanne's, but that's, is there some now what or something like that going on?
Yeah,
on Thursday?
I always join the singing group
okay.
every week.
And that's permanent offer.
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah, but I can be late. But today I said I will be late 15 minutes because
Okay.
I usually put the lyrics on the chat.
Oh, right. Okay.
Yeah,
Well, I've
so-
changed it now, so it says an hour and a half.
Okay,
So
okay,
no
okay.
more confusion. Thank you for telling me
Okay.
that. I didn't
Yeah,
realize.
okay.
Okay.
Yeah, okay.
And I'll post.
Yeah, sorry.
Bye,
Yeah,
Akiko.
but thank you for today and see you
Bye.
next
Thanks
week.
for being here.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Okay. So the trick with this exercise is that we're not letting our rational mind have an opinion about anything at all. So we're using our hand, or if you prefer to type, you can do that. But you start every sentence, however long the sentence, if you really knew me, and you just write. And we're going to do it for we'll do it for 2 minutes, and we'll just see what comes out of our pens or our fingers. And then we'll share whatever we feel like sharing from it. Okay. So starting right now, if you really knew me, ... If you really knew me, ... And you just keep going. You don't think about it. And see what comes out. Okay. Cool. All right. Is anyone willing to share all or part of what you wrote? Who want? If that's a yes, I'm going to pretend it's a yes. Who'd like to go first? And I can go first if you like to make it feel better. It's up to you.
I can go.
Thank you, Tina.
So I'll just say if you really knew me once, and then I'll just read the other sentence stems. Yeah.
Okay.
If you really knew me, no, I'll repeat it each time, right?
Yeah,
Perhaps. If you really knew me, you'd know I love dogs. If you really knew me, you would know how much I love to laugh. If you really knew me, there would be no need to ask what my favorite movie is. If you really knew me, you would know my favorite color is purple. Ta-da.
That's it?
That's it.
Thank you. Just breathe that in. Taste that. These are precious things. This is the inside coming out.
Yeah. I also had a phrase about my dog. I think in a way.
Will you read for us? To us?
Yeah, I didn't. I couldn't finish my last.
Oh,
phrase.
okay.
Okay, but anyway, I wrote. If you really knew me, you would be laughing a lot. If you really knew me, you would be quite surprised. If you really knew me, you would know about all the weirdness the life can achieve. If you really knew me, you would know my dog, and you would know the cat that left. And you would know my child and all those relationships that formed me and that formed the lives of others. I wanted to say that the lives of others that I formed, I think. Anyway, if you really knew me, you would know yourself as well, because in the end, there is no separation.
Thank you. Feel free to finish that sentence, by the way.
I finished it.
Oh, good.
With a separation part.
Oh, it's lovely. That really loved that. Thank you. Okay, I'll read mine. And this, by the way, this exercise is thanks to Anne Randolph. I was introduced to it in a workshop I did with her as, a participant.
Oh.
If you really knew me, you'd know that I love rivers and streams. If you really knew me, you'd stop and tip your hat in my direction on the way to the market. If you really knew me, you'd love me. If you really knew me, you'd fear me. If you really knew me, you'd hesitate. If you really knew me, you'd dive in. If you really knew me, I'd feel safe. If you really knew me, you'd wonder why I'm always smiling, except when I'm not. I do agree with you, Tina. There is something extra about reading the whole sentence each time. There's it kind of, you sink deeper and deeper each time you hear it.
Yeah.
Tina, you missed this opportunity at the beginning, so I'll offer it to you now. We shared anything that had kind of come up for us around the idea of how we grew up, in terms of how that affected our sense of creativity, our entitlement to it, our relationship to it, our understanding of it, making room for it. And anything else that might have become more prominent visiting you in your thoughts or dreams just because of us coming together last week?
Well, I think growing up, my mom always, I was pretty artistic as a kid, and she quite encouraged me, there was always paper around, and whether it was crayons or paints or whatever. So I feel like that was such a gift, having that sort of environment. But the one time I was maybe 6, because my 2 sisters are younger, and we're almost 2 years apart, exactly, a little less, than 2 years. So maybe it was like 6, maybe Terry was almost 4, and my sister Tony was maybe just 2, like a toddler or something. And I was encouraged to draw. Oh, yes, love your drawing. So I was drawing on the wall with, I don't know what, maybe crayon, maybe something. And I remember getting in trouble and getting spanked and yelled at and stuff. And that, I'm sad that kind of sticks out more than I had to kind of really think about it and remember how much my mom encouraged us all to express our creativity, Yeah.
It's funny, isn't it? Those sudden attacks on something that we were doing in a more dreamlike state of engagement do seem to stay with us. They sort of interrupt a flow. So it's like the river is meandering and this huge log jams on top of it. And you're like,
Right.
oh, I wasn't expecting that. I didn't know that was in the river.
Yeah. Yep.
I was meandering with a friend yesterday. His name is Chris. I've known him a long time. And he's very gentle. He's kind of like a gentle giant. He's very tall. And we were chatting, and I spontaneously filmed him with my camera on my phone. Because what he was saying, I just had that shudder of relevance. It's like, oh, this is special. And I captured it, and I'd love to share it with you. It's about 3 minutes long, but it's quite thought-provoking. And bear with me. Share sound. Share desktop.
Another perspective is that, I remember someone talking once about a spoon, hand-carved spoon from an African tribe, and it was this beautiful piece of art. And there were no artists in that community. They were just people that took great care with the things that they had and that were, rare for them, right? And then I thought about how, we'll just churn out a spoon, and it's just like, it's a spoon. And then we'll go to a museum to see the beautifully hand-carved spoon. We have to get in our car, go to the museum.
Why is that, do you think? What is that saying?
We don't
broken apart.
We don't see the art in every day, or we don't cherish the art that's all around. It must be put away in a place like a museum, behind glass even, it's a different cultural. You're on.
That's me talking in the film.
Oh.
So when the film's finished, then
I'm sorry. I thought you were asking the question. No, I'm sorry.
Not yet. Thank you for that, though. That was great.
Well, everything's broken apart. I'm happy with my neighborhood. It's a fine suburban neighborhood, and it's very near all kinds of wonderful things. But I was reflecting the other day on how I set foot outside the house, and I walk around, and it's not as beautiful as it could be. Each person has tried to make their own little house okay on the outside. Sometimes they try to make it beautiful. They make it beautiful on the inside, probably. All of the way the land is now on that hill in El Sobrante is because of the plots that were laid out by the county 100 and so on years ago, right? That meant, which of course were laid on top of the Ohlone, which just lived in the land, right? But because the plots were built a certain way, because our Western human mind has divided everything into little boxes, then we were sold little boxes, then people bought little boxes, and then I have 100% dominion around my little box and 0 dominion around your little box, and very little reason, and of course more and more with the car, to even talk to you necessarily and relate to your little box. So the boxes are a construction. The Ohlone didn't think of things in boxes. They didn't say, you have a right to be here, but not here. You know, that was so foreign, of course, that's part of how they got their land stolen from them. And then I have to drive to a place that's beautiful. So there's something about that with the spoon, the African spoon and the Target spoon. We've broken our lives apart into 1,000 pieces, and then I think we suffer in all kinds of ways that sometimes we even forgotten that we suffer. Like when I grew up in the 70s and 80s, and you remember Berkeley, Oakland was this kind of tribal, many tribes, but tribals, communities of people that lived in this contiguous space that was relatively affordable and kind of funky and interesting and kind of expensive for the time, but it wasn't really expensive by now standards. And the likelihood, we didn't know about El Sobrante and Pinole and all that, and it's kind of neat that we've learned about these places, but the point is, when I was growing up, I would set my feet on the street in Berkeley, and I was part of a connected web of spaces that you could bike through, walk through, with beautiful gardens, and my feet could take me from one end of Berkeley to the other. My bike could take me, and I was physically connected to the store, because the store was 12 blocks away, or or the record store or the cafe, and it was part of this connected web that I was physically connected to. Whereas now it's like, nope, you've got to get into your little spaceship, and then you've got to fly to this other zone, and it's the mind, it's the function of the mind. It's one answer is that it's part of living in a society in which the mind has gotten too much control, and we've lost touch with the body and the heart. Because the mind, what does the mind like to do? What is the mind good at? What is the mind talented at? Creating categories, boxes, delineations, definitions. But then, of course, when you get too much in the definitions, you lose the heart, and that's what we've done.
Thank you. I'm gonna stop.
What did he say? Because I missed, I think, was he referring to people who lived before the boxes? And
Sorry, that's... How do I stop
Earth's
that?
life has constructed
One
ever
minute.
more powerful brains
Wait.
over the 500...
I apologize. That was the video carrying on to whatever was next. Carry on, Eva.
yeah, just for me to understand, because I think he said VA, whatever, I didn't get
The
the word.
Ohlone, was it
Oh.
Ohlone? That's the American Indian or native
Okay,
tribe.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Ohlone.
Okay, now I supposed it was like that, and yeah, makes
And when
sense.
he referred to El Sobrante and Pinole, they're local neighborhoods, but they're less developed. So that was for him the contrast that he was pointing out. that some wilder places still exist.
Mm.
But that thing about the boxes, I found that really spectacular. And why this course, it needs to exist if we, or courses like this, that help us realize that the way things are is not necessarily conducive to a more wild, full experience of ourselves before we were domesticated. This boxes is part of the domestication.
That's
Definitely.
really interesting to me because I was reading on Quora. I don't know if anybody's, it's just a question and answer thing, and they'll pop everyone with a little Quora update questions that, somebody asked, is Boise, Idaho, a good place to live or a good city? And the answer, we're very familiar with Boise apparently, but it's, the capital of Idaho, kind of one of the only sort of big cities there. Much of Idaho is very, small, rural, etc. Beautiful mountains, all that, but they said, unfortunately, it's the growth of it. And they were talking about how when he said, the old city of it had been, kind of not a really very big downtown. And then there was the ring suburbs, they call them older suburb, and then but this new growth is just, they talked about how crazy it is to try to put these suburbs on top of, it's just, when he was speaking, I was thinking about city planning, how important it is, but it's done at a time when the car wasn't a thing, for example,
Yes.
Things were planned for maybe walking, biking, or a bus or some sort of mass transit. But now you introduce the individual car and it changes the landscape, and such. Interesting.
Yeah, when I walk locally, I get to interact with so much more.
You see what you don't, in this metal box, you drive from point A to point B and you miss so much of what's along the route, I think. Yeah.
I just
So,
really
I
like.
like to meander. I like our assignment.
I do
appreciate the
too.
assignment.
I'm really fond of this. I'm so glad Meander popped into my mind this morning. So I will post this video in our Wild Soul Artist group in the week 2 topic, and I will repost the assignment as well.
Good.
And I'm very grateful to spend this time with you. I really appreciate your reflections.
We thank you.
Have a really lovely rest of your weekend.
Love to see you guys. And Eva, thank you for the reminder that there is no separation, that if you really knew me, that sentence stem, I went to things about me, and like you said, you would know yourself. And that was profound for me. I'm going to sit with that. Thank you.
Yeah, I think if something that makes sense comes out, it's because, me has stepped out of the way. It's really what happens.
Yeah, because the art then becomes a collaboration. It's an expression of the connection between one side of that liminal wall, right, and the other side.
Yeah.
And you're kind of meandering together.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's beautiful also to have that limit between our home and the place where the dragons are, because you can't be there all the time, or at least I couldn't, I think. So it's also nice to be able to go there and to cross. Yeah.
Yep.
And that ability to imagine, remember, is part of our rational knowing. So this is also about reclaiming the wildness within the rational. It's not about banning the rational. It's about letting it breathe into its full diaphragm.
Mm.
because it's got a lot more to it. It's a lot fleshier, as I like to say, than it's been allowed. It's kind of like factory farmed. Rational knowing has been factory farmed, and everything else has just been banished.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
You know, it's like, what can we get out of rational that's efficient by certain definitions with certain outcomes in mind, right?
Right.
And then it
Yeah.
loses its poetry.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
here we are,
Yay.
planting poetry back in
Right.
various ways.
Yeah.
All right,
Ila,
ladies.
I'm happy to see you with this colorful, what is it? A jacket.
Oh, this is a
Oh,
jacket.
nice.
Yeah.
It's beautiful.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right.
Really.
Well, I'm
yeah,
so
and
glad my
Oops.
Wi-Fi worked.